working folk don't have a chance unless we organise. Which side are you on? Which side are you on? Which side are you on? Tell me, which side are you on?
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to thank everybody for coming today. My name is Cooke. I'm the President of the Blue Mountains Union Council. And for those who aren't aware of the Blue Mountains Union Council, we're a community-based group set up quite a few years ago now to support unionism and other social issues. So I'd like to thank our speakers today, and I'm going to hand over to Trish Doyle to do all the introductions and chair the meeting. Thank you.
Thanks, Kerry. Just before we start, I'd like to ask Honey Val to welcome us to country.
Good afternoon. My name is Auntie Val Authorised. I'm the Darug Elder. On behalf of my people, both past and present, enjoy your day and welcome to Darug country.
Thanks everyone. Thanks Auntie Val very much for the welcome and acknowledge that we're meeting on Darug and Gundungurra country. So yes, people know me from various things around here, but what I'm going to talk about, two different lots of stuff today. One of them is about journalism, so writing on the internet and the kind of market changes that are going on there. And the other thing, I'll have a bit of a chat about Firewatch and what we're doing there and the kind of future for those kind of things on social media. So I'm a blogger, I'm a writer, I'm a journalist sometimes as well. So I write on anything to do with politics, disability, refugees, all that sort of stuff. And for the last year I've been a freelancer, so that's what I do for money. I am going to make a distinction between blogging and journalism. So stuff that I blog about is what I'm interested in. So I'm interested in left-wing politics, I'm interested in political structures, policy, feminism, all that sort of stuff. So that's the kind of stuff that I tend to blog about. It's my opinion. Often with facts, I like facty opinions, but it's my opinion. So that's the stuff that I tend to put on my blog. I've been part of a group blog. We did a really big one last year leading up to the election called Oz Opinion, and we had about 30 people, I think, writing from every part of the spectrum. So from right all the way through to left, lots of people who call themselves centrists, which I just think they can't make up their mind. And we did lots of different stuff covering lots of different aspects of the election. So we did lots of in-depth pieces about Western Sydney, for example, because there were lots of people talking about Western Sydney as though it was, racist bogans, basically. So we did a lot of stuff about, there's 2 million people out here, you might want to change your mind a bit. So we did a lot of that kind of stuff. We did a podcast, and we ended up being included into the Guardian's comment stable when they came to Australia. So that was all very exciting, and lots of us got pieces picked up for the Guardian and for SBS and for other online sites. None of it pays a cent. It was lots of fun. Didn't pay brass. And the distinction I want to make between that kind of blogging and fun and writing on the internet and then journalism is quite different, and I think quite important, because the model for journalism has really changed. So gone are the days where advertising revenue in print newspapers was enough to sustain large reported kind of rooms. Specialisation, all that sort of stuff. Like I know there's a few journalists in the room. People have, seen the enormous amounts of redundancies that have happened in newspapers, in TV news, in radio news. It's about to hit the ABC as well. So that kind of work as a paid journalist with your contacts, the idea of activities got really, really hard to do these days. So a lot of people are now trying to kind of find a business model that works on the internet. That's really hard to do. So one of the things that I've done a lot in the last year is write about the NDIS. So the NDIS, as people know, the National Disability Insurance Scheme, it's an incredibly complicated bit of policy. It's a huge shift for how we deliver social services in Australia. Massively impacts some of the most vulnerable people in Australia. So it's a really big thing. And I've been writing about the NDIS now for 3 years. I started not being able to get published with the policy analysis I was doing, in any kind of publication. People say, you can't talk about that in a bad way. The NDIS is perfect, it's fabulous, it's awesome. And I'm going, yeah, no, a bit problematic actually. So, but I first got published in New Matilda, and that's a long-running lefty website. It's been going for about 10 years. they barely pay. That's the reality. So my analysis started there. It then got picked up by a literary magazine called Overland, and I was commissioned to write a large essay about the NDIS and paid for it. And then that was then picked up by the ABC's disability portal Ramp Up. And I became an ongoing writer for them and paid at proper rates. Who knew? The problem is, Ramp Up finished at the end of June, and the ABC has refused to pick it up. They've said now anyone can write for the drum doesn't pay proper feature rates or investigative rates, and Stella, bless her cotton socks, is the only one who gets a run, because she's the only person with a disability in Australia who writes about it. The reason I'm saying this is that Ramp Up commissioned me at about the middle of this year to do a long investigative piece about the NDIS, and that required me using my contacts, using my, taking time to people, say, with intellectual disabilities, people who can't communicate in conventional ways. It took me weeks to do. I read hundreds and hundreds of pages of Hansard from Senate committees on it. I talked to dozens and dozens of people in various ways, and I produced a 3,000-word investigative piece. No one else is going to commission people to do that. And so where in this new kind of unpaid blogging world are you going to do a 3,000-word investigative piece on a major piece of social policy in a way that's actually going to be sustainable? No one can do that kind of stuff as a hobby, unless you're rich. Or, lotto, someone, quick, pay me. But those kind of things don't work. Those kind of investigative pieces won't happen now. What major newspaper is going to commission it? What major online publication is going to commission it? They're just not. And then this week, another publication that publishes things like policy analysis, the King's Tribune, has closed after 7 years. Again, not being able to make their financial model count and not wanting to publish people without being paid. They've had a commitment to paying the writers. So that brings me to the sort of bigger campaign that's going on at the moment, which is called Pay the Writers. So this has been done by the MEAA, which is the media union, the Australian Society of Authors, Overland, there's a couple of others as well. And there's a campaign now amongst freelancers of going, well, why should we be expected to write for free? I can't say to my landlord, I've got some exposure for you, you can't set my rent. It doesn't quite work. And so that's been the thing, you can't pay your rent with exposure or lifting your profile or any of those other things that people say. So I'm sure this will change. There's actually lots of interesting models being thought about. There's micro-payment models, there's crowdfunding, there's lots of different ideas. But while that transition is on, where do those sort of bigger journalisms and investigative sort of pieces go? And where do they, how do they actually happen? Who gets to, actually do those, take time, develop contacts to make those kind of stories and take the time with them? It won't happen. So what are you left with? Spin, people who can write for it as a hobby, which is great, but that's, doesn't pay the rent. So I'm sure Jen will have more hope, to talk about with some of that stuff. But that's the situation at the moment. I suppose I want people to consider when you're consuming media online, have a think about who's paying for it, who's paying for the writing, and would you expect other workers to work for free? So if you don't, which I would hope no one in this room would, why do you expect writers to? And it's something that I think we all need to be conscious of subscribing to things, subscribing to online newsletters, to subscribing to websites, putting in those few dollars, supporting a crowdfunding campaign, because at the moment that's all there is. And I think new models will happen, but it's difficult, and with a small market like Australia, particularly on policy, wonky sort of stuff, it's really small. And without rounds reporters now dedicated to things, it's things that get falling through the tracks. So, and particularly with this government, we've got to keep an eye on what they're doing. So, yeah, that's my plea, to cough up to websites. The other thing that I wanted to talk about briefly was Firewatch. So, Firewatch is a Facebook group, so I'm sure there's a couple of admins here that I can see, and I'm sure quite a lot of you are members of Firewatch. And what it is a Facebook group that was started about 2-3 years ago. It's quite small. It was about dealing with the emotional implications of disaster and particularly bushfires. So, but what happened last year in the October fires was a group of 200-300 people is now well over 4,000, and it became a central hub for information sharing during the fires in a way that I think was quite amazing, and was able to fulfil a hole in communications that, as well as they did, the RFS and the ABC couldn't fill. So I'll give you an example of some of the things that we did during the fires. So we had live blogging from all of the RFS meetings. So we had, on one night, we had people in Hazelbrook, Katoomba and Warramoo all at the same time, all live blogging in the group, the information for people who couldn't get there themselves. We did a lot of rumour checking and myth busting. So, no, Katoomba is not on fire. No, Katoomba is not on fire. A lot of checking and supporting people how to make a plan and what to do. And then we also did some very, very micro things. So we had people posting in the group, I'm in Sydney, my neighbour in this street, I haven't heard from her, I can't get hold of her. Someone go, I'm just around the corner, I'll drop in, quick, yep, I'm here, she's fine, she's evacuating right now, everything's sorted. And so that sort of micro level communication was extraordinary. And then after the fires, we were able to help with the donations in terms of please stop giving stuff. And who needed what and where. Same with the RFS brigades, being able to coordinate support and help for each of those local brigades. And then in the period after the fire, there's been a lot of very direct liaison with basically politicians. Council, the mayor and other councillors have been very available. State and federal, not necessarily representatives now, but perhaps in the future, have also been incredibly valuable. And we've been able to coordinate with council staff and talk about things like insurance, rebuilding, all of those kinds of things, and people connecting up together. So we're going to do a lot of analysis in the next few months of what worked and what didn't. But I think it's an interesting way of seeing that social media can actually be really helpful in an emergency. It's not just the rumour mill, it's not terrible, it's not awful. It actually was fabulous, and it worked really, really well. So that's something that we're going to do quite a lot of work on in the next 6 months, the admin group, just to kind of say, well, how do we do it? Now that the scramble's kind of over, what worked, what didn't, and what can other communities kind of learn. So that's me.
Let's do